Hello?
Life had always been comfortable for me and Rachel. We lived in a modest suburban neighborhood, our home a cozy two-story house with a white picket fence. It was the kind of place where every lawn was well manicured, and neighbors exchanged friendly waves. We'd been married for a decade, our union seemingly strong and enduring. I worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm in the city, a job that I found both challenging and fulfilling. Rachel, 3 years older than me at 43, was the primary breadwinner, working as a marketing executive at a prominent company. Despite the occasional stress from our demanding jobs, our life was a harmonious blend of shared responsibilities and mutual support. Our neighborhood was the quintessential suburban dream, a place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Barbecues in the summer, holiday decorations in the winter, and children playing in the streets were all part of the community's rhythm. Rachel and I had become a fixture in this community, known for our hospitality and frequent gatherings. Despite our public appearances, I'd noticed subtle changes in Rachel's behavior over the past few months. Little things seemed off, but nothing I could quite put my finger on. Rachel had always been outgoing and sociable, but lately, she seemed distant, her smiles less frequent and her laughter forced. I tried to chalk it up to stress from her job, but a nagging feeling told me there was more to it. We had no children, a conscious decision made early in our marriage to focus on our careers and each other. This decision, which once seemed wise and practical, now felt like a chasm between us, widening as the years passed. Our home, once filled with lively conversations and plans for the future, had grown quiet, each room echoing with a silence that felt almost oppressive. Being an optimist, I believed we could work through whatever was troubling Rachel. I loved her deeply, and was willing to do whatever it took to support her. Little did I know, the tranquil facade of our life was about to be shattered, revealing secrets that would test the very foundation of our marriage. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Rachel, who once delighted in sharing the details of her day, began to withdraw. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly became stilted, punctuated by awkward silences and vague responses. I noticed she was spending more time on her phone, always quick to lock the screen or switch apps whenever I came near. Her laughter, once a constant and infectious presence in our home, grew infrequent and hollow. The changes in her behavior gnawed at me. She began dressing up more than usual, even for mundane errands. She'd apply her makeup meticulously and wear outfits that she used to reserve for special occasions. When I asked her about it, she brushed off my concerns with a dismissive wave, saying she just felt like looking good for a change. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Late nights at the office became more common for her. She'd call to say she had to work late on yet another project. At first, I took her at her word, understanding that her job was demanding. But the frequency of these late nights began to feel suspicious. On a few occasions, I tried calling her office, only to be told she had left hours earlier. One evening, I decided to surprise her at work with her favorite takeout. I thought maybe a spontaneous dinner together could break through the tension that had built up between us. As I approached her office building, I saw her walking out with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, their heads close together in a way that made my stomach twist. She hadn't mentioned any new colleagues. I watched from a distance as they got into his car and drove off. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more painful than the last. Who was this man? Why hadn't she mentioned him? I felt a surge of jealousy and anger, but also a sinking feeling of dread. That night, I confronted her when she got home. "Who was that guy you left with tonight?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked startled, then defensive. "Oh, him? That's just Steve from marketing. We were discussing a project. Why are you spying on me?" "Spying? Rachel, I came to surprise you with dinner. You never mentioned this Steve before." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Do I have to tell you every single detail of my day? You're being paranoid, Mike." Her reaction only fueled my suspicions. I wanted to believe her, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention, looking for any signs that could confirm or dispel my fears. Rachel's phone habits became even more secretive. She'd take calls in another room and would get defensive whenever I asked who it was. Once, I noticed a text preview on her phone from someone named Mark that read, "Can't wait to see you again." My heart pounded in my chest. When I asked about it, she brushed it off. saying it was just a harmless message from an old friend. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the evidence was mounting. The late nights, the secretive behavior, the unexplained messages, each piece added to my growing suspicion. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, questioning everything I thought I knew about our relationship. One night, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, I decided to check her phone while she was in the shower. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages. There it was, an ongoing conversation with Mark, filled with flirtatious texts and plans to meet up. The final blow was a message from him that read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for our next rendezvous." My heart sank. The evidence was irrefutable. Rachel was having an affair. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me reeling with a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. My suspicions had been confirmed, and now I had to face the painful reality of my wife's infidelity. The night I discovered Rachel's affair was the night my world came crashing down. As I stood in the bathroom, the sound of the shower masking my heavy breathing, I felt my knees weaken. The truth was laid bare on her phone screen, each message a dagger to my heart. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I knew I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own home. Every chance I got, I snooped through her phone, her emails, and even her work bag. It felt wrong, violating her privacy. But my need to know the full extent of her betrayal overpowered any guilt. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. There were photos, secret meetings, and an emotional intimacy that she no longer shared with me. Each new discovery was a fresh wound, deepening my pain and anger. I decided to take it a step further. I bought a small voice recorder and hid it in her car. It was a desperate move, but I needed to hear her conversations, to confirm what I had read. It didn't take long for my suspicions to be validated. Listening to her conversations with Mark was excruciating. Hearing her laugh with him, use the same terms of endearment she once reserved for me, made my blood boil. One particular recording stood out. They were planning a weekend getaway, a romantic escape while I was supposed to be on a business trip. The audacity of it made my skin crawl. I knew then that I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I had to confront her, to face the truth head on. The night before my supposed business trip, I prepared myself for the confrontation. I printed out the most damning evidence, gathered the recordings, and waited for her to come home. She walked in, looking more radiant than she had in months, probably from the excitement of her upcoming tryst. My heart ached at the sight, knowing that her happiness was built on a foundation of lies. "Hey, Mike," she said cheerfully. "How was your day?" I could barely look at her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with restrained fury. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I motioned for her to sit down at the dining table. I laid out the printed messages and played a snippet of one of the recordings. The color drained from her face as she realized what was happening. "What is this?" she stammered, her eyes wide with panic. "This," I said, pointing to the evidence, "is what you've been doing behind my back. All those late nights, the secretive behavior, it's all here. How long, Rachel? How long have you been cheating on me?" She opened and closed her mouth several times, searching for words. Finally, she settled on indignation. "You went through my things? You recorded my conversations? That's illegal, Mike. Don't you dare turn this around on me," I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. "I wouldn't have had to if you hadn't been lying to me, cheating on me. How long, Rachel?" She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "A few months," she whispered. "But it didn't mean anything, Mike. It was just—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't insult me by saying it didn't mean anything. I heard everything. I read everything. You planned a weekend getaway with him. You've been living a double life." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mike. I never meant for it to go this far. I was lonely, and you were always so busy with work. I felt neglected. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So this is my fault? Because I worked to provide for us? You felt justified in betraying me?" "I'm not saying it's your fault," she said quickly, her tears flowing freely now. "I'm just trying to explain. I felt alone and Mark was there. He listened to me, made me feel wanted." Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her off the hook. "And what about us? Did you even think about what this would do to our marriage? To me?" I did, she sobbed. Every time I felt guilty, but I couldn't stop. I'm so sorry, Mike. Please, can we work through this? Can you forgive me? The room was thick with tension. I felt a mix of rage, sorrow, and a strange numbness. I don't know, I said finally. I need time to think. You need to cancel your trip with him, and you need to leave. I can't stand to be around you right now. She looked at me, pleading. Please, Mike, don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do anything. Just go, Rachel, I said, my voice breaking. Just go. She left, her sobs echoing through the house as she packed a bag. The moment the door closed behind her, I collapsed into a chair, my body racked with sobs of my own. The reality of my wife's betrayal settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days following Rachel's departure were a blur of anguish and uncertainty. My emotions were a chaotic mix of rage, sadness, and betrayal. The house felt eerily quiet without her presence, but the silence was preferable to the constant reminder of her infidelity. I needed space to clear my head, to figure out my next steps. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed determined to communicate. She bombarded me with texts and calls, begging for a chance to explain, to make things right. I ignored most of her attempts, but one evening, fueled by a mix of curiosity and residual anger, I agreed to meet her at a local coffee shop. I arrived early, choosing a secluded corner where we could talk without interruptions. I watched the door, my heart pounding as I waited. When Rachel walked in, she looked fragile, a stark contrast to the confident woman I once knew. She spotted me and approached cautiously, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Mike, she said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. The silence between us was heavy, charged with unspoken words and unresolved pain. I've been a wreck these past few days, she began, her voice trembling. I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I've thought a lot about what I did and why, and I need you to understand that it was never about you. Not about me? I finally managed to say, my voice tight with controlled anger. Rachel, you betrayed me, our marriage. How is that not about me? I know it sounds ridiculous, she said quickly, tears welling up in her eyes. But it's the truth. I felt lost, disconnected from everything, and Mark. He was a distraction, a way to escape my own emptiness. Your emptiness, I echoed incredulously. What about my emptiness, Rachel? What about the void you created in our marriage with your lies and deceit? She flinched at my words, but I couldn't hold back. You didn't just cheat on me physically. You betrayed my trust, my love. You took everything we built together and tore it apart. Rachel broke down, her sobs loud and uncontrolled. I know. I hate myself for what I've done. I don't expect you to forgive me, but please, Mike, give us a chance to rebuild. I'll do anything. Anything? I asked, my voice cold. You mean like how you were willing to do anything to be with Mark? How can I trust you, Rachel? How can I ever believe a word you say? She reached across the table, grasping my hands desperately. I'll end it with him, I promise. I'll go to therapy, couples counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. I pulled my hands away, shaking my head. It's not that simple. Trust isn't something you can just rebuild with promises. You broke something inside me, inside us, and I don't know if it can ever be fixed. Rachel looked devastated, her tears streaming down her face. I don't know what else to say. I love you, Mike. I always have. I lost my way. Love? I said bitterly. If this is your idea of love, then I want no part of it. You need to understand that this isn't just about what you want anymore. It's about me, my pain, my healing. She nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. I'll give you the space you need. But please, don't close the door on us completely. I'll wait, however long it takes. I stood up, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over me. I need time, Rachel. Time to figure out what I want, what I need. Right now, I don't see a way forward for us. She watched me go, her face a mask of heartbreak and regret. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a sense of release, knowing I had said what needed to be said. But the pain of her betrayal was still raw, and I knew that healing would be a long and arduous journey. The confrontation had left me emotionally drained, but it was a necessary step. I needed to voice my anger, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. Now the ball was in my court. It was up to me to decide what came next, whether our marriage had any chance of survival or if it was time to close this chapter of my life for good. The days turned into weeks, and Rachel's pleas for reconciliation became more insistent. She texted, called, even showed up at my workplace once, begging me to give her another chance. Each attempt only fueled my anger. How dare she act like the victim, like she was the one who had been wronged? The pain of her betrayal was a constant presence, gnawing at my insides, turning my love for her into a cold, hard rage. It was during one of these sleepless nights, staring at the ceiling in the guest bedroom I now called my own, that I decided I couldn't let her get away with it. She needed to feel the depth of the pain she had caused me. I didn't just want to end our marriage. I wanted her to regret ever crossing that line. Revenge became my solace, my purpose. I started by gathering every piece of evidence I had meticulously collected. The texts, the photos, the recordings, all of it. I compiled everything into a neat, damning dossier. This wasn't just about ending our marriage anymore. It was about destroying the facade she had built. First, I contacted Mark's wife. I found her profile on social media, a bright, cheerful woman who posted about her family often. It took me a few drafts to find the right words, but eventually, I sent her an anonymous message with all the evidence attached. I wanted her to know the truth about the man she was married to. Part of me hoped she would confront him, that their life would be torn apart just like mine. Next, I decided to expose Rachel. It was cruel, but at that point I didn't care. She had ruined our life, and I wanted her to face the consequences publicly. I created a fake email account and sent the dossier to her colleagues, her friends, and even some of our neighbors. I included a note. This is who Rachel really is. A cheater. A liar. I knew it would humiliate her, but I felt justified. She had made me feel small, worthless, and I wanted her to experience that same degradation. The fallout was swift. Rachel's calls became frantic, her messages more desperate. "Why are you doing this?" she cried in one voicemail. "I said I was sorry. Please stop." But there was no stopping. I was too far gone, too consumed by the need to see her suffer. Then came the legal side. With my lawyer, I pursued the divorce aggressively. I demanded full ownership of the house, the car, everything. I wanted to strip her of the life we had built together. She tried to fight back, but the evidence of her affair weakened her position significantly. My lawyer was ruthless, ensuring that Rachel would leave the marriage with as little as possible. The more I pushed, the more she unraveled. Her job became strained as whispers of her infidelity spread. Friends began to distance themselves, unsure how to reconcile the Rachel they knew with the one in the dossier. She moved out, staying with a friend while the divorce proceedings dragged on. One evening, she showed up at the house, looking disheveled and broken. "Mike, please," she begged at the doorstep, tears streaming down her face. "You've made your point. I can't take this anymore." I looked at her, feeling a mix of satisfaction and a twinge of pity. "You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me, Rachel." "I know," she sobbed. "I know I messed up, but you're destroying me. I can't go on like this." Her desperation was palpable, but it only solidified my resolve. "Now you know how it feels," I said coldly. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before betraying someone who loves you." She left, defeated, and I watched her go with a strange sense of closure. The revenge had given me a twisted sense of peace, a way to channel my pain into something tangible. But as the days passed, that peace began to feel hollow. I had destroyed Rachel's life, but it hadn't rebuilt mine. The emptiness remained, and I began to wonder if I had gone too far. In the quiet of my empty house, I started to reflect on what I had done. Revenge had been my way of coping, but it hadn't healed the wounds. It had only deepened them, turning me into someone I hardly recognized. The realization was sobering. I had sought to punish Rachel, but in the process, I had lost a part of myself. With the divorce nearing its final stages, I knew it was time to let go of the anger, the need for revenge. It was time to start thinking about how to rebuild my life, not on the ashes of our marriage, but on a foundation of forgiveness and self-discovery. The path ahead was uncertain. but I was ready to take the first steps toward a future free from the shadows of betrayal and vengeance. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The legal battle was over, but the emotional scars remained. Rachel and I had one last meeting, a final conversation to tie up loose ends before we officially parted ways. She suggested meeting at the house, the place that held so many memories, both good and bad. When she arrived, I was already in the living room, sitting on the couch we had bought together so many years ago. Rachel looked fragile, her eyes red from crying. She hesitated at the door, as if unsure whether she was welcome, then slowly walked in. "Hi, Mike," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Hi, Rachel," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Have a seat." She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, the distance between us feeling both physical and emotional. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of everything that had happened hanging heavy in the air. "I got the final papers today," she said, breaking the silence. "It's really over, isn't it?" "Yes," I said, nodding. "It's over." She looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "I know I've said it a million times, but I am truly sorry for what I did. I never meant to hurt you like this." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Rachel, I loved you more than anything. What you did broke me in ways I didn't think were possible. But holding on to that anger, seeking revenge, it didn't fix anything. It just made things worse." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I saw what it did to you, to us. I don't blame you for hating me." "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "I hate what you did, but not you. I think, deep down, I always hoped we could find a way to fix things. But the trust is gone, and without that, there's no foundation for us to build on." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. I can only hope that someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive me." I looked at her, seeing the pain and regret etched into her features. "Forgiveness is a process, Rachel. It's going to take time. But for now, I think we both need to focus on moving forward, on finding our own paths." She wiped her tears away, trying to compose herself. "I want you to know that I truly regret everything, and I hope you find happiness again, Mike. You deserve it." "Thank you," I said, feeling a pang of sadness. "I hope you find peace too." We sat in silence for a few more moments, both of us lost in our thoughts. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a shell, empty and hollow. It was time to let go, to move on from the past and start anew. Rachel stood up, taking one last look around. "Goodbye, Mike," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Goodbye, Rachel," I replied, watching as she walked out the door for the last time. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house, signaling the end of an era. I sat there for a while, reflecting on everything that had happened, the choices we had made, and the consequences we now faced. The pain was still there, but it was accompanied by a sense of closure. I knew the road to healing would be long and difficult, but I was ready to take the first steps. The past was behind me, and it was time to focus on the future. As I stood up and walked through the house, I felt a sense of determination. I was ready to rebuild, to find happiness and peace once more. The journey wouldn't be easy, but it was a journey worth taking. The divorce trial itself had been grueling, filled with tense moments and bitter exchanges. Rachel and I had both fought hard for what we believed was right, but the judge had ultimately decided in my favor. The evidence of her affair, coupled with my meticulous documentation of our finances and my commitment to the marriage, had swung the decision my way. Walking into the courtroom that final day, I felt a mixture of dread and determination. My lawyer, a tough, no-nonsense woman named Marcia, had prepared me for what to expect, but the reality of facing Rachel in such a setting was still daunting. Rachel arrived with her own lawyer, looking pale and exhausted. She avoided my gaze as we took our seats, the tension between us palpable. The proceedings began, and each side presented their case. Marcia was relentless, highlighting Rachel's infidelity and the impact it had on our marriage. Rachel's lawyer tried to paint a picture of a neglected wife seeking comfort, but the evidence was damning. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. "Your Honor," I began, "I entered this marriage with love and commitment. I worked hard to provide for us, to build a future together. Rachel's betrayal was a devastating blow, but it was the lies and deceit that truly destroyed our relationship. I'm asking for a fair division of our assets and for full custody of the house, as I believe it is in my best interest to move on and start anew," Rachel's lawyer countered. But the judge seemed unimpressed. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally gave his verdict. The house was awarded to me, along with a fair division of our other assets. Rachel was visibly shaken, her eyes filled with tears as the reality of the situation sank in. As we left the courtroom, Rachel approached me, her expression a mix of sorrow and resignation. "I never wanted it to end like this, Mike," she said quietly. "Neither did I replied, my voice filled with sadness. "But this is where we are. We both have to move on." She nodded, wiping away her tears. "I hope you find happiness again." "I hope you do too," I said, watching as she walked away, knowing it was the last time we would see each other in such a setting. With the trial behind me, I felt a sense of relief, but also a deep exhaustion. The battle was over, but the journey to rebuild my life was just beginning. I knew I needed to focus on healing, on finding a way to move forward without the weight of the past dragging me down. The first few months after the trial were the hardest. The house, now solely mine, felt both familiar and foreign. I spent my days cleaning, redecorating, and making it my own. Each change was a small step toward reclaiming my space, my life. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Ellis, who helped me navigate the complex emotions of betrayal and loss. Our sessions were intense, but they provided a safe space to explore my feelings and begin the process of healing. Dr. Ellis encouraged me to focus on self-care, to find activities that brought me joy and a sense of accomplishment. I rekindled old hobbies, photography, hiking, and cooking. These passions had been neglected during my marriage, overshadowed by the demands of work and the turmoil at home. Rediscovering them felt like reconnecting with a part of myself I had lost. Through my therapy and personal pursuits, I began to rebuild my social life as well. I reconnected with old friends, and slowly, new friendships formed. My sister, who had always been a supportive presence, became a more integral part of my life. We spent weekends together, reminiscing about our childhood and forging new memories. One evening, while attending a photography exhibit, I met Emily. She was an artist, passionate and full of life. We struck up a conversation about the exhibit, and something clicked. Our connection was immediate and undeniable. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, our friendship blossomed into something more. Emily was a breath of fresh air. She understood my pain, having gone through her own share of heartbreak, and she was patient as I navigated the complexities of a new relationship. We took things slow, allowing our bond to grow naturally. With her, I felt a sense of peace and excitement that I hadn't experienced in years. As time passed, the wounds from my past began to heal. The anger and bitterness that had once consumed me faded, replaced by a sense of acceptance and hope. I realized that while Rachel's betrayal had shattered my world, it had also given me an opportunity to rebuild, to create a life that was authentically mine. One sunny afternoon, Emily and I sat in the park, watching the ducks in the pond. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "You seem happier these days, Mike. Lighter." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words. "I am. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm moving forward." She took my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm glad. You deserve all the happiness in the world." As we sat there, hand in hand, I reflected on the journey I had taken. The pain of betrayal had been overwhelming, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. I had learned to value myself, to prioritize my own happiness, and to embrace the future with an open heart. Life was far from perfect, but it was mine to shape. And with Emily by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The past was a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I was free to write my own story, one filled with love, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings.
Bye.